Hey everybody, I thought I would compare, I just clanked these things together, not a scratch. I thought I'd compare the new Tornek Rayville Blakjak, also I think they call it the 7B, with this Marathon SAR. A lot of people are comparing the two, saying this rips off of this or whatnot. I have to say, both of these are awesome watches, but neither of them is really a copy of the other. They're both implementations of military standards, related military standards. So they're going to have a passing resemblance, but the reality is these watches have, I think, way more different than they have in common. And I think that becomes really clear when you put them side by side. The Blakjak is available in two different versions, one with the dive bezel like this, and one with like a timing GMT bezel, 12-hour bezel. The SAR is available in lots of different formats. And maybe I can start there. This watch is a reissue of a watch from the mid to late 90s. It's kind of notable. The original was that it has a bracelet on it. As a military watch, there are not an especially large amount of watches that have a bracelet. And especially at the time, the 90s was an era of commoditization of watches, issued watches. I just made a video on some other marathons, and watches like this started to become standard military issue watches in the 90s, where everything was going plastic. So watches that were full steel, like this one, rather like the original, were a rarity, and to have a full metal bracelet especially so. The original watch was made by Stocker and Yale. Not a big watchmaking company from what I could see. They're like a military supplier, and they only made watches for a brief period of time. I think they make more than watches. I think the company's still around. They just haven't made watches in a very long time. Let me clean this up. Stocker and Yale is abbreviated to S and Y, or Sandy, and that original watch was the Sandy 660, and it implemented a military standard. Let's say I have it here, the MIL PRF 46374, and there were different variations of that standard. One is this watch right here, and another one is the one I just showed you. There are Stocker and Yale watches that look pretty much just like this, but black, from the 90s. And Marathon, this one implements the same standard. And so the Stocker and Yale and Marathon, that looks like what I'm holding here on the left, they look similar, not because one copied from the other, but presumably someone working for the American military designed the watch, or at least had majority say over what it would be. I'm sure the military works with these vendors, and they go back and forth, and they come up with a standard. So this watch is an implementation of a military standard, and it's a different one than this, but I have no doubt that they are related. So they have that passing resemblance. The original watch used tritium vials in these little recesses here on the on this chapter ring, and that's why it kind of looks like that on this watch. Tritium is awesome in that it glows all the time, but it doesn't glow very bright, and it does fade over time. And so 10 years on, yeah, there's a good argument for not wanting tritium, unless it's from a company like Marathon, where you know they're going to be here in 10, 15 years to get a replacement dial, because those vials, they do die. So the original watch had that. You see the radioactive logo here has a cross through it to say there's no radiation. I don't think the original military watches that had loom did that. Like the I have a different Marathon with that standard. It doesn't have like a no radiation. I think they did that just for stylization. 7B is, I think, a play on the 6, like variation 6 of the standard is what the Stocker and Yale is. This is like the 7th. It's kind of an interesting story behind this company, Tornek, Rayville. They're a real watch company today, but back in the 50s, to get around import restrictions, Tornek Rayville imported Blancpain 50 Fathom watches and put their name on it. I think the guy's name was Tornek and Rayville, or maybe it was Rayville and Tornek was like an anagram of the city that he imported things to. I really forget. But there's only one original Tornek Rayville from the 50s. And it looks kind of like this. And that's it. That's the only watch just for a couple of years. Recently, the same person who owns Mark II watches brought this other brand back, Tornek Rayville, and they brought back this watch with it. So this is a reissue or homage of that 1950s Tornek Rayville. The issue there is there's not a lot of watches in the back catalog to reissue. There's just that one watch. So the modern Tornek Rayville is doing something really fun, which is pretending there's an alternate storyline of everything. As in, what if Tornek Rayville continued to exist? What would their implementation of this standard look like? Or what if they continued to exist to today, to the 2020s? Am I doing this wrong? And yeah, there we go. That's what this watch is supposed to be. What if Tornek Rayville had never gone away and they are continuing to make military watches? But I really like how they made the dial sterile, so it doesn't actually say the brand on it, if that makes sense. You know it's there. They have that kind of logo down here. Some other people have made some gripes on this watch that that radiation symbol and 7B are a little close to these other numbers. I kind of agree with that. I think they could have been closer to the center. That logo of here could be over here. But other than those gripes, I love this watch. I think it's fantastic. This is I think the documentation said a steel, like a sapphire coated steel bezel, something like that. Gorgeous bezel, really excellent polishing or mix of polish and brushing. It is built to such an incredible standard. One of my gripes on the Marathon is the bezel action. I mean, it's okay. It's easy to turn, that's for sure. It's utilitarian. This has quite possibly one of the best bezel actions I've ever felt on a watch. It is just so crisp and so sturdy. I just am blown away. But the overall quality of this watch is exceptional. The bracelet is top notch. The clasp is solid metal. It's not tool-free adjust, but it is just tops. It does use an NH35 of 40, 45. It escapes me now, but and so it's an expensive watch for a watch with that movement. Remember, Seiko has $600 watches that use that movement, so I don't think it's that crazy. But everything else about this watch is just top notch, and I've been really enjoying my time with it. As soon as they announced it, I said, "Yep, that's for me." I really like military-inspired watches, black dial. I think it stands out on its own. I mean, it is an homage. It's a very accurate homage of that Stocker and Yale, just with the cross through the radiation. It says 7B. This is a mechanical watch. That original Stocker and Yale was a quartz watch. I wouldn't have been bothered if this was quartz, given the purpose. Just a solid tank of a watch. I don't have a problem with that being quartz, and of course it uses loom and not tritium. But to compare these two, I mean, there's a passing resemblance. They're both dive watches. They both have a 24-hour dial, but they're so much different. Firstly, the Tornek Rayville is larger. There's a JSAR, a jumbo SAR, but that is a huge watch. That would dwarf this. So they're different sizes. You can see that this has a chapter ring with those little insets where the loom is. The Marathon has no chapter ring. It has a rehaut. And it's really deep dish because of that tritium. Those hand stacks have to be deep so they clear each other. I think they look very different. The bezels are very different. You can see the thickness of this one versus how that's a really thin bezel. I like that on the Marathon, but I think they both look great. Proportionally, I think very different kind of watches. But the biggest difference, I mean, these don't look anything alike at profile. This has like this double coin edge, which I love. It is very grippy. It's wonderful, but I love the Marathon too. This like giant gear that you just rotate. It's just fantastic. The Marathon has these large slab sides. The Tornek Rayville has this sloping profile side, which is very comfortable. You know, a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces. The Marathon's all brushed. I mean, they both have drilled lugs. And they both have a 3-link bracelet, but kind of a different one. Very different one. And the crowns are different. This has a knurling. It extends past the crown guards. This one is lined up with the crown guards, and you can see this slopes downward with this polished surface. They are very different watches. You know, if you say they have a passing resemblance to each other, I'd say, yeah, they do. And there's a good reason. They're both based on military standards that are related to each other. But if you say that this is ripping off this, I mean, you're just wrong. That's no way. There are companies, I'm pretty sure, that have made clones of this watch that have really ripped it off. Now, this watch stands on its own. Of course, the date here is at 4:30. The date here is at 3. There's a really cool, the day on this. It's a bilingual day. Let me open this up again. So you have English, but you also have this like mission. So you can count up. So if you have a multi-day mission, that 7 is the last day of your mission, and you can kind of start from 1. And I've been using that. I think it's fun. I think it's clever. It's, you know, it's something I haven't seen before. And I couldn't quite find out if the original Stocker and Yale did that. I'm blown away. I love both of these watches, but I'm blown away with what he's done here. I just think this is a fantastic watch. And when people say this is like a clone of this, I just think that's so ridiculous. I had to make a video comparing the two. I don't know. I think it stands alone. I think it's a very distinct, very unique watch. You could take any two watches and say you could find some similarity, right? But I think you really have to hunt for it. Yeah, I think this is a unique watch. If you haven't seen any other reviews, if you're a little put off that it's somehow a clone of something, it isn't, other than the watch that it is a clone of, which is the original Stocker and Yale from the 90s, which you can't get anymore. And this one's better. It has sapphire. It's a mechanical movement, solid metal links all through. I think this came with a strap and rubber too, but you know, what makes it special is it's a military watch on a bracelet. Really, really cool watch. Don't be put off by it. Take a look. Oh, I should say, they're hard to get your hands on, but they do restock. They've already restocked once. Get on the mailing list. And I am pleased as punch with this watch. But you can't go wrong with either. Let me turn off the lights and get some lume. Let's end off that way. Remember, one is tritium and one is lume. So I don't know. I think this is BGW 9 maybe because it's blue. It's not the brightest lume I've seen. If you see, the Marathon has actually has some lume with the pip here, but tritium is not. It's not the brightest, but it does glow all night. But yeah, that's pretty cool too. All right. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.